The air around Sarah felt heavy as she stood at the grave, watching her father's coffin being lowered into the earth. The people surrounding her whispered softly, offering condolences, but Sarah barely heard them. She felt numb. First she had lost her mother, and now her father at 15 years old. Sarah was alone in the world. The house that had once been filled with love and laughter now felt empty and cold. The walls seemed to close in on her, reminding her of all she had lost. The village offered no comfort, only painful memories. There were no family members left to lean on, and Sarah knew she couldn't stay there forever. She decided to leave to go to the city where she believed opportunities would be waiting for her. She carried a small bag of belongings and the little money her father had saved. Sarah boarded the bus that would take her to a new life. The city was overwhelming. The noise, the crowds, the towering buildings. It all felt like a different world for the first few days. Sarah wandered the streets searching for work. She knocked on doors, asking if anyone needed help. But the city wasn't kind to someone as young and inexperienced as she was. As the days passed, her money began to run out, the hope she had brought with her started to fade, and fear took its place. She spent nights on park benches shivering in the cold. She stayed hungry for days, and her body was exhausted. She knew she was running out of options. One evening, while sitting on the sidewalk, a woman approached her. She was older, with heavy makeup and a confident air about her. The woman looked down at Sarah, her eyes scanning the young girl's weary face. "You look lost." The woman said, "What's your name?" Sarah hesitated but eventually answered. The woman introduced herself as Rose and asked why Sarah was sitting alone on the street with no one else to talk to. Sarah poured her heart out. She told Rose everything about losing her parents, about leaving the village, about how she had hoped for a better life in the city. Rose listened patiently, her expression softening as Sarah spoke. "There's a way to survive in this city," Rose said after a pause. "It's not easy, but you'll make money and you won't be hungry anymore." Sarah knew what Rose was offering, but the hunger in her stomach and the desperation in her heart made it hard to refuse. Rose led her to a part of the city where the nights were long and filled with secrets. Sarah stood with the other women, waiting. It was a life she had never imagined for herself, but she told herself it was only temporary. She just needed to survive. Sarah's new life was one she had to learn quickly. The men came and went, each one leaving a little more of her soul behind. The shame weighed heavily on her, but she told herself that she had no other choice. Each night was the same. She felt herself growing colder inside, disconnecting from the girl she used to be. Despite everything, she managed to make a friend. Her name was Olivia, a lively girl with a sharp wit and a bright smile. Olivia had been in the city longer and knew how to navigate its dark corners. The two of them became inseparable. Sarah told Olivia everything. Her fears, her hopes, and the secrets of her past. But what Sarah didn't know was that Olivia wasn't as loyal as she seemed. Hidden beneath Olivia's smiles was jealousy, a quiet envy that grew as Sarah became more confident and more successful in their line of work. Sarah didn't notice the little digs Olivia made, in the way she sometimes laughed a little too hard when things went wrong. To Sarah, Olivia was the only person she could trust in the city. They spent their nights together, and when the mornings came, they shared their stories over cheap meals. It was during one of those nights that Sarah met Daniel. Daniel appeared different from the other men who approached Sarah. He wasn't loud, and he didn't look at her the way the others did. There was a kindness in his eyes that made her heart skip a beat. He wasn't a customer. He was just a man walking by, curious about the girl sitting alone in the bar. Daniel approached Sarah, they began talking, and soon Daniel asked Sarah out for coffee. First, Sarah was hesitant. Her life was complicated and messy, but something about Daniel's gentle nature drew her in and she agreed. Their coffee dates turned into dinners, and before long they were inseparable. For the first time in years, Sarah felt seen. Daniel didn't know about her past, and she was too afraid to tell him. She didn't want to ruin the one good thing she had found in the city. As their relationship deepened, Daniel proposed. Sarah was overjoyed. She had finally found love, someone who cared for her, someone who made her feel whole again. She imagined a future where her past no longer mattered, where she would leave behind the streets and build a life filled with happiness. But Olivia was watching. The jealousy she had hidden for so long began to bubble to the surface. Olivia had always been envious of Sarah, her beauty, her strength, her ability to find love, and now seeing Sarah so happy made Olivia's envy unbearable. Olivia knew everything about Sarah's past. She had heard all the stories and all the secrets. Olivia paced back and forth in her tiny apartment, her mind racing. She couldn't help but think how things had turned out. Sarah, the girl she had once pined for, was now living the life she had always dreamed of. Olivia had watched as Daniel, the man Sarah had fallen in love with, treated her with such care and tenderness, ignored her. Olivia, filled with envy, decided to meet with Daniel. One evening Olivia sat with Daniel at a cafe. The jealousy she had been holding on to slipped out. They had been talking casually, but the bitterness in her voice was hard to hide. She leaned closer to Daniel, her eyes narrowing slightly as she spoke. "You know, Sarah wasn't always like this," Olivia began. "She used to do things to survive. She slept with men for money. You probably don't know the full story." Olivia expected Daniel to be shocked, to look at her in disbelief, but instead Daniel leaned back in his chair, his expression calm and steady. Olivia's heart raced, expecting to see the horror in his eyes, but to her surprise, he sighed softly and nodded. "I know," Daniel said, his voice was gentle but firm. "Sarah told me everything." Olivia blinked, stunned into silence. Her mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. She had been so sure that this secret would destroy their relationship. How could he be so calm about it? Why didn't he leave her like other men would have? She thought. Daniel continued, his eyes softening as he spoke. "I love her, Olivia. I love her for who she is, not for her past. She did what she had to survive, and I respect her for being honest with me." Olivia could feel the shame creeping up her neck, the realization of what she had tried to do hitting her like a tidal wave. Her plan had backfired completely. She had wanted to ruin Sarah's happiness, but instead she had only proven how strong their bond was. Her jealousy, her bitterness, it had all been for nothing. "I'm sorry," Olivia stammered, her voice trembling. "I didn't mean to cause any trouble. I just don't know what I was thinking." Daniel looked at her for a long moment before nodding. "It's okay, Olivia." But as Olivia walked away that evening, her heart felt heavy. She couldn't shake the anger and the bitterness. Why not me? Why had Sarah found someone like Danny, while she remained alone, stuck in the life she hated? 2 days before the wedding, Olivia found herself at the bridal shop with Sarah. Sarah was trying on her wedding dress one last time, making sure everything fit perfectly. As she stepped out of the changing room wearing the dress that would make her a bride in just a few days, Olivia felt a surge of uncontrollable anger. Sarah looked beautiful and radiant. Even the dress fit her like a glove, and she beamed as she turned to Olivia, her face glowing with excitement. "What do you think, Olivia? Does it look okay?" Olivia's chest tightened. "That should be me." "Why her? Why not me?" She forced a smile, nodding. "You look beautiful, Sarah," but inside Olivia's heart was burning with jealousy. Every compliment and every smile only fueled her rage. She couldn't bear to see Sarah happy. It wasn't fair. Sarah had taken everything she desired to have. Daniel, the life Olivia had always dreamed of, the happiness she felt she deserved. Olivia could feel the bitterness eating away at her, turning her mind into something darker that night. Unable to sleep, Olivia's mind raced with hateful thoughts. She pictured the image of Sarah in that wedding dress over and over again, each time feeling the sharp sting of envy. She knew what she had to do, driven by jealousy and anger. Olivia went out into the night. Her footsteps are quick and determined. She found a small, dimly lit shop and bought a bottle of acid. Her hands trembled as she held it, but her mind was made up. If she couldn't have happiness, then neither could Sarah. Olivia arrived at Sarah's house just past midnight, her heart pounding in her chest. She wore a mask to cover her face, her hands gripping the bottle tightly. She rang the doorbell, and after a moment Sarah opened the door, her face full of confusion as she looked at the masked figure in front of her. Before Sarah could react, Olivia threw the acid at her, watching in horror as Sarah screamed in pain, clutching her face. The sound of her cries echoed in the night, but Olivia turned and ran, disappearing into the darkness, her heart racing with both fear and guilt. She had done it. She had taken her revenge. Sarah lies on the floor, tears streaming down her face. With her shaking hands she touched her burning skin. She could barely see, her vision blurred by pain and tears. Everything she had ever wanted and everything she had dreamed of was slipping away from her. In that horrifying moment, Sarah was rushed to the hospital, her body trembling from the unbearable pain. Her screams echoed in the ambulance as the paramedics tried to calm her down at the hospital. The doctors worked quickly to clean her wounds. The acid had done its damage, but miraculously when it was thrown at her, Sarah had instinctively turned her head slightly to the side, saving her eyes from being severely burned. After hours of treatment and careful monitoring, the lead doctor emerged with news. She was very lucky. The doctor said, his voice was serious but calm. The acid didn't get into her eyes, and although there's some scarring, it won't be permanent. With proper care, her face should heal in about 2 months. It's going to be a long process, but she'll recover. Daniel felt an overwhelming sense of relief all over him. He hadn't realized how much he had been holding his breath until that moment. Tears of gratitude filled his eyes as he thanked the doctor. Sarah would be okay. The next few days were hard for Sarah. Her face was bandaged and the pain was still intense, but the doctor's words gave her hope. She could barely believe that she had escaped such a terrible fate. If the acid had hit her directly, she might have lost her sight or been disfigured forever. Still, the emotional pain lingered. Who would want to hurt her like this? Daniel visited her every day, bringing flowers and sitting by her side, encouraging her to stay strong. He made the decision to postpone the wedding, assuring her that they would reschedule once she had fully recovered. "We'll get through this," Daniel whispered one evening, holding her hand gently. "The wedding can wait. What matters is that you're going to be okay." Sarah nodded, grateful for his support, although a part of her still felt shattered. Who could have done this to her? The thought haunted her every moment. A week after the attack, Olivia came to visit Sarah in the hospital. Her face was covered in concern, and she acted as though she was deeply upset by what had happened. She hugged Sarah, careful not to touch her bandaged face, and sat by her bedside, her eyes wide with fake sorrow. "Oh, Sarah," Olivia exclaimed, shaking her head. "I can't believe this happened to you. Who would do something so evil? I hope the police catch the person responsible." Sarah stared at her, feeling a strange sensation in her stomach. There was something off about Olivia, but she couldn't quite put her finger on it. Still, she pushed the thought aside, not wanting to believe that her best friend could have anything to do with the attack. Sarah said softly, her voice raspy from the painkillers, "The police are trying to find out who did this. I don't know why anyone would want to hurt me." Olivia leaned in closer, her voice lowering to a conspiratorial tone. "Why don't you just tell the police to stop investigating? You should focus on your recovery. Let God deal with the person who did this. Whoever they are, they'll get what they deserve. Don't stress yourself with the investigation." Sarah blinked, surprised by Olivia's suggestion to stop the investigation. "But they're trying to help." Sarah replied, "They're doing their best to find out who did this to me." Olivia sighed, shaking her head. "I understand, but maybe it's better to leave it in God's hands. You've been through so much already, Sarah. You don't need the added stress. Let the police stop digging. Whoever did this will be punished by a higher power. You just need to heal and move on." Sarah thought about it for a moment, unsure of what to say. Olivia's words made sense in a way, but something didn't sit right with her. Why was Olivia so eager to stop the investigation? Shouldn't she be encouraging her to find justice? Sarah glanced at Olivia, who was still cursing the unknown perpetrator, saying things like, "May God punish that wicked person and they will never know peace." But the way Olivia's eyes darted around the room, the forced look of anger on her face, made Sarah feel uneasy. Something was wrong, but she couldn't quite grasp what it was. Maybe, Sarah mumbled, still uncertain. "I'll think about it." Olivia nodded quickly, smiling brightly as if she had convinced Sarah, saying that you need to focus on your health and the wedding. Everything will be okay. As Olivia leaves the hospital, Sarah lay in bed staring at the ceiling. The pain was still there, but her mind couldn't stop replaying the strange interaction with Olivia. Why did she feel like Olivia wasn't being entirely honest? The doubt grew stronger with every passing minute. At the police station, Daniel sat across from the officers, anxiety knotting in his stomach. He couldn't shake the image of Sarah's burned face from his mind. He needed to know who had done this to her.